Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. All right, ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. This is your host, Eric, and you're back for another Solocast. And don't worry, it's not just my arbitrary rambling. I threw a prompt out, and I wanted to hear from the interwebs, from the socials, all you experts, all you line level warriors out there. But really, what would you put out to new cops? I know a lot of new cops tune in, a lot of new cops and prospective law enforcement professionals or new applicants and recruits are listening in, are reading. So I know that, it's awesome because it's all about the future, right? It's all about mentorship at every level. So for those that are sharing the message, the post, the page, the show, the episodes, thank you. It is in efforts to build up our next generation as best we can. And I think that is our role, right? Whether you're doing it on social, whether you're doing it in the lunchroom, like that's extremely critical, right? So continue to find those opportunities to mentor, continue to find those opportunities to be mentored, and just to build and have these conversations, right? Iron sharpens iron. And this is what everything I do is really all about. So the prompt was, what advice would you give a new cop? And I just left it there, right? I didn't ask you to make it technical or operational or with regards to health or development. I just put that out as simply as I could think about it. And then I just wanted to see what trickled in, right? So I'm just going to crush through some of these because they're fantastic. And it's interesting to see from all the perspective from, people that have gotten their feet kind of just solidified in the new career to people that are retired and had moved on to other industries, everything in between. But without further ado, here we go. So Tyler LT said, love what you do, but love your family more. All right. So we jumped straight into family and awareness. Like I'm asking you how to be a new cop or what you should know. And it goes right back to family. So I love this, man. I love the fact that we need to recognize that as much as this job can be a calling, as much as this job becomes a significant portion of our identity, which in a lot of ways is good, there is such a thing as too much. And we talk about that on the show too. So thank you for your insight. David said family first. So Sarge David, he responds that as well. Jordan, don't be rude. All right, so check that ego. Don't be rude. Knowledge is power. Understand your authorities and limitations. Don't just do things mindlessly. I love that, right? Let's be intentional. Let's be thoughtful. We have a lot of power. Let's not take it lightly. But also, I love the aspect of introspection here, right? Know thyself. We talk about that a lot. The justice system probably doesn't work like you think it does. Make peace with that. Right. So I don't hear cynicism here. I hear just real talk. And there's a lot of value in real talk, right? It can go to ego, right? Like we come in, a lot of us admittedly, it's kind of cheesy, but there is a part of us, like we have to be real that we want to come in and change the world. We want to come in and like really flip our communities, really attack the violence that we see out there. But a lot of times after a while, it could seem like not a lot is changing and we're just part of the normal, right? And that could be really demotivating. It could be really corrosive when you focus on like a specific case or a series of trends where you're like you and your team are just putting it out there and you're catching the suspects. The case is solid, but then the ball is dropped, right? In whatever way. And it's not to place blame in my example, but you all know what I'm talking about, right? There's times where you feel like it's the system, quote unquote, right? Or someone involved in the system in your organization or a parallel agency or prosecutors, whatever, right? The judge, what have you. But like, just to keep it in focus, like just because things don't work out perfectly, they certainly won't frequently, doesn't mean we give up, right? Let's just keep it real. Sarah, LT, lead with heart and empathy. Man, Sarah, if you haven't heard my episode with Sarah Shendy, new lieutenant, LT, check that out on Blue Grit Radio. Dakota, Sarge, talking about being self-aware, shying down from egotistical values. Okay, so that's another one talking about checking that ego. Recognize how you may have a negative influence. Talks about generation, some of the new hires being Gen Z. Their social skills are different. Okay, so I like how also Sarge, like good awareness, good generational and social awareness. He's not saying they don't know how to communicate, because you hear that a lot. And they said that about the millennials, and everyone said that about the X's. And then who knows what people were saying about the boomers. You could probably find some tablets carved out somewhere where the older generation was complaining about the boomers. But yeah, they're different. Times are different. They're always going to be different. And the Z's are going to complain about whatever comes next, like double alpha or whatever they're going to call it. So let's just be real. Again, have humility, have some empathy, be patient. We have the most change ever just in the world, and certainly the most change ever in this industry. So they're not doing the same job you and I were doing. If you have, and I'm saying you and I, not to the person doing it new right now, right? But like anyone say with 5 years on or more, like, or those retired, certainly, like I wasn't even doing the job you were doing. And then we were kind of doing a parallel overlapping job, but yeah, it's not apples to apples. So give grace, reserve judgment. Let's just try to be helpful, right? A simple theme of being helpful can go a long way. The best advice you give a new cop is to do the job you signed up for. If that isn't meant for you, get out of the job you signed up for. And I like this. And Dakota, I feel like we could have a good episode if you tune in on here and hit me up. I'll try to remember to reach out to you. But there is so much value, I believe, and it sounds bad until I think I explain it. And I think when I have small conversations or one-on-ones, they totally get it. But if this job isn't serving you anymore, like it's time to go, because you don't owe anyone anything. If you've done your service for, and that's why I say like 3 years or 30, 2 or 20, whatever it is, like, thank you for your service. If it's not serving you, if it's not serving your family, if it's corroding your positivity and your outlook on life, if you're not well, if you're not mentally healthy, if you can't find a way to pivot out of that, whether that's a different assignment or a different agency, like it's time to go. And you're not doing anyone any favors. First of all, yourself. Next, your family, those you're around, those you care about. Your agency is certainly not, right? Like, we've all had our bouts of toxic attitude. I certainly have too. But if you're not able to get out of that or get pulled out of that, it's just a terrible, terrible road, and you're just going to sink, and you're going to bring others down with you. Alexis, another commander. So there's so much, but I'd encourage them to become a true student of the game. All right, so that continual learning. I love that, because I'm learning something new every day. I love how we have a habit oftentimes on the crew. If we have a student officer in briefing and roll call, and this has been for years and years, certain sergeants are really on top of it, but they ask the student, like, what did you learn yesterday? And a lot of times it's like, something that people kind of like, oh yeah, man, I remember that. And then sometimes it's something quite a bit more complicated. And now, admittedly, because I'm not doing the street work that my people are doing every day, sometimes they explain something, I'm like, man, I would be a mess doing that, right? Or I don't know how to use that new system, or, the last time I did it, we weren't using this program. I would have to literally have a field training officer or just an officer walk me through it. It would probably take me 5 times more than an average officer. So a little bit of humility, but also just a little bit of awareness. So yeah, stay a student of the game. Mark Bouchard, my man, this career is what you make it. We sign up to help people, but we can easily lose sight of how we are helping people. Find ways that you feel passionate about within the profession that bring you meaning. Okay, so we talked about that cynicism, right? So it comes back to purpose. What is your why? Love that, man. Also, he goes on, you're responsible for taking care of yourself. This career can have some massive challenges. You need to have healthy habits and coping in place. for when those hard days happen. 100%. 100%. So if you haven't checked out Mark's book, it's available on Amazon. He's come on the show numerous times. That's Mark Bouchard, Bouchard, author of Setting My Sights on Stigma, a much more personal account. And he does get into the nitty gritty, the science, the data, beyond just the technical, but also his own personal experience. So fantastic read there for those that want to learn more and those that want to develop that awareness, especially peer support and wellness folks. Grab a copy of that. Pat. Okay, so we got a CSI team member chiming in. Treat people the way you would want your mother, wife, daughter treated if she were stopped. And always protect your gun sight. Okay, like two flips, right? Like one side of the coin, empathy. I love that, right? We often get outside of that and we forget sometimes because it's normal. It's normal that this becomes our normal, like going to a suspicious stop, a violent thing. People are trying to come in your crime scene. You're barking back at them. Sometimes that's extremely necessary. Absolutely. I'm not talking about times where I'm not talking about how you have every opportunity to de-escalate endlessly. No, not at all. But oftentimes, even if you are caught in the moment, yelling at somebody in the moment, I've found a lot of success after I had a few years under my belt and some more humility. But just going to somebody and recognizing like I could flip it back into a positive interaction, and I absolutely will stand behind the fact that most of the time when you try, it does become a positive interaction. Right. So yelling at somebody to back up or they're going to have issues, right? Get out of my scene or you're going to be arrested or detained. No, stop. I can't answer your questions. Get over there now. And then they mouth off and say something, flip me the bird, right? But how many times after the scene is safe, they've kind of been mulling around. Maybe they're a resident, just concerned about the neighborhood. Where I go over, I'm like, hey, sir, excuse me. Hey, I just want to apologize for yelling at you. I don't like yelling at you. I didn't think you were involved, but I just knew in the moment I couldn't talk to you. Sometimes people do that to try to distract us, and it's not safe. Like I had to deal with this thing or this person at the moment. I appreciate you understanding. 9 times out of 10, if not more, someone's come back to me and said, yeah, man, like I was just super concerned and no, thank you. And I was out of line too, right? Like I wasn't being helpful. A lot of times you just level with somebody like a person, they will feel very comfortable and eager to be a human back to you. And then protect your gun sight. So again, I love how that it's both sides of the coin, stay safe, right? That is our most critical thing, is to stay safe and help others be safe, right? That is that protect and serve. That is ultimately our most critical role. Yeah, we wear all these hats, and I talk about all these other hats because I think they need to be talked about. But at our core role is to be tactically proficient, to be able to act in the preservation of life and the preservation of others. Amy, Sarge. All right, so my advice is to check your ego, learn self-awareness, gain emotional intelligence. Heck yeah, so legit. Ian. All right, Ian, I know Ian from conversations in the region. He's a regional cop, but law enforcement is a big field. Find what you want to do and keep learning. If you don't, you'll burn out fast. Yeah, man. So back to that perpetual learner, perpetual student. Respect 101. If you want respect, you have to give respect. And good luck. All right. I like that. So my flip was, we don't have to get respect to give it. And what I mean by that is we have a higher responsibility than the average person. We know we hold ourselves to a higher standard than the average person. And so I can be respectful to somebody regardless of whether they give it to me. And my response to that is because historically and traditionally, I don't know how many times I heard from the time like watching cops to hearing cops talk, when I was coming up. But yeah, I'll give you respect when you give me respect. Respect is earned, these things, right? Yeah, respect absolutely is earned, but I am willing. I don't need it. I don't need it from you. I don't need it from you, suspect, or you disorderly subject person. I will give it. I will be respectful and I will be professional. I have my slips just like everyone, but that is my goal. That is my mission. And I don't care whether you give it to me or not. If you do, that sounds kind of cold. That's nice when you give me respect, right? Like, I think that people that have done the job well and right for a while, they recognize that a lot of times, even dealing with very violent, very awful individuals that have done awful things, it doesn't mean you're not judging them, but oftentimes when you treat them respectfully, they're respectful back. And there are times that it's not awful people that are doing awful things. Sometimes it's people that are doing non-ideal things, problematic things. People have a slip. No one's perfect. I'm not giving excuses. That's our job. We hold account on behalf of society, or we're part of that piece. We run our lab. But I don't have to treat them like a POS because, frankly, early in my career, I treated people like a POS. A lot of people did, right? A lot of people do. And we just need to do better than that. Or talking to someone like that, or talking to your buddy behind their back, like, what a POS, right? Like, sometimes those feelings, emotions, and words may be warranted, but oftentimes they're not constructive. They're not extremely helpful to the situation. Right, so we're talking about respect there. Rob says, be the kind of cop you'd want your kids to run to for help. Yes, like, be the change you want to see in the world. It starts with you modeling. Leadership 101. Whatever you want your guys to do it that way. And it's not just about traditional rank. If you're a detective, do the work, interact with people, handle cases, police the way you want the guy or gal in the cubicle across the way to be like, right? Just do it strong, do it humbly, but demonstrate through your actions. If you're a beat cop, whether you have 2 years on or 12, be the kind of cop that you want other cops to be. That will resonate, right? Negativity is contagious, but so is positive work, right? Start demonstrating that. People will be empowered to do it the way you do it because they'll see it's the right way. It's the better way. All right, Zach is a detective sergeant. He says a few bullets here, and they're solid. So, sweating all the small stuff is a fast lane to burnout. Find and learn the lesson in every situation. A few strong relationships are better than 1,000 weak ones. Man, it kind of makes me think about that. Try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one, right? Because you just make no decision. You have no stance. You have no values. You have no prerogative. You have no vision, no direction. He goes on to say, explore everything. Your strengths and interests may not be what you thought they were. And I've talked about this before. If you asked me early in my career, why do you want to be a cop and what do you intend to do? I would say, yeah, I'll get into street work. And not like I wanted to move out as soon as possible, but I just figured it wasn't my strength. And weird it wasn't, but I made it my strength. And I stayed in patrol almost my whole career. But I thought I'd go into investigations pretty quick. Super analytical, more introverted. I got a lot of kudos from a couple sergeants early on, just saying my case reports were legit and I followed leads and I was diligent, organized, methodical. They encouraged me pretty early on to start thinking about that and start looking towards that as a viable route and start chewing on it, prepping my resume, right? What have you. I just took a totally different direction. And I talk about how I would have never thought I'd be a recruiter. I never would have wanted it. I kind of didn't want it when I started. And it sounds super weird, but I was pitching the idea to a boss, one of the big bosses when I was just a sarge, but I had it totally envisioned for somebody else. I saw that person as being the perfect representative for the community, for the agency, the person that just kind of lit up a room and has done a lot of different things that could speak to a lot of experiences. But that person didn't stick around, and there was a seat that needed to be filled, and I went to it, and man, did I learn so much. I mean, I had fun, and it was a grind, but I learned so much, and recruiting has become such a passion. Even though I'm out of it now, I'm watch commander back in patrol, but any opportunity I can have to just help recruit for the region, for the profession. I mean, that's a lot of what I still do. That's why I'm talking to this audience of pre-hires. That's why I work with people trying to get hired. I mean, there's all this content driven towards you, but also I'll do one-on-ones if that's what's most helpful. If that's your prerogative, then I'll make it mine. So all to say, yes, check things out, be open-minded, be curious. Going back to Zach, because I took a little tangent, his last bullet point, health and family are the foundation of everything else you do. Build a strong foundation, you can build anything on it. Man, I wish I had. I mean, I knew this, right? Like, I always wanted to be a family man, like, since as long as I can remember. I didn't know what I wanted to do. My job ideas kept changing from the time I was like 5 or 6 until college. And I jumped into this law enforcement thing post college. But yeah, the one thing that was a constant was I knew I wanted to be a husband. I knew I wanted to be a dad. I feel very grateful that I'm able to be that now today. But it's easy to lose sight of what your priorities are when you're in the thick of it, when you have stress, when you have these schedules, when you have all this stuff that can really dominate your mind. And what I mean by that is, like, everyone knows that's been in it for a little bit or is coming into it that your life changes and who you are changes when you become a cop. We want to mitigate that within reason, but a lot of that is for survival, and it's important, right? You're going to look at the world differently because you're a cop. Like, I could be sitting in a religious building, right? A place of worship. I'm going to feel differently now that I'm a cop than I did before, because there are terrible people out there that do terrible things to people of all kinds of religions in all kinds of institutional buildings and places of worship. It's a terrible thing, but that's what it is. So I'm going to think, feel, and act differently in those places. I don't want it to be debilitating, but it's a thing. You're going to drive around differently. You're going to go to a mall differently. You're going to attend a public event differently, like a concert or a parade, or many cops say that they will avoid it like the plague, or they will do this one, not that one, right? Like, I don't want to go too much in the weeds, but that's what I mean by how dominating it can be, how overwhelming it can be for some. But you got to keep everything in check. And I would say, man, like, Zach, you're correct. Health and family are what help you keep those things in check, right? Emotional regulation, it gets a lot easier when you're fit, right? When you're stressed, the literal physiological responses to stress are dampened when you have a good heart and good lungs, healthy lungs, right? Your breath work, okay? Those are things that are very tangible. You can drive around and work on breath work. I'm not saying do like minute-long breath holds while you're driving and moving a motor vehicle, but you can certainly control pace, focus on diaphragmatic, is that the right word? Breathing with your diaphragm. You can do that when you're walking around, when you're sitting at your desk, when you're driving, you know. You can practice mindfulness. You can do little things like keep a kettlebell by your desk. You can do little things like 20 push-ups when you wake up, regardless of whether you got 5 hours of sleep or 10. 20 push-ups isn't going to hurt you. It'll help you. You might not want to do like 2 CrossFit workouts when you only slept 5 hours. And I've talked about that a lot. As far as grinding too hard when you're not recovered. But yeah, health, your inputs, what are you reading? What are you consuming? What are you listening to? That's going to help how you balance things. And then family, right? Are you putting the phone down? I've admitted, I think on the podcast, but certainly on somebody's podcast, that I, especially building up more on social media and being active on this thing, like how many times I said, oh yeah, wait, hold on, wait a sec, to my wife or kid. Well, my wife is going to roll her eyes and then eventually, understandably, become resentful. Absolutely, understandably. And then my daughter is now, she's small, right? She's like, I'm talking about mostly the time she was a toddler, but she's learning. I'm showing her, I'm demonstrating to her that my phone is more important than her. And it can't be that way. That's not the thing, right? Whether it's my work phone or my personal phone, and both can be very consuming. Believe me, on your time off, like depending on your role, depending on your job, whether it's cases, whether it's recruiting, whether it's command, The clock doesn't really stop even when it stops. So it's finding those routines, those rituals balance. That's what I talk about. That's what I work with people on. So take a breath. If it all sounds overwhelming, if I just threw a lot of stuff at you, just hit pause, take a breath, revisit this, right? Listen to it in chunks. Maybe take some notes, right? Like, what stuck out to you? What do you need to work on? What are the opportunities that you're feeling that are jumping out at you? Oftentimes, I like to talk to people and work with people to kind of like look at every pillar of their life, right? Fitness, like exercise, movement is one, and then nutrition's a different one. Sleep, your social health, like how are your relationships, and family may or may not be a different one for people. Generally, it would be a different one. Like who's in your household or who's your immediate family, and then also like your friends, right? You could even make it work and non-work friends because you should have both, absolutely. But like, how would you rate all these things? And super relevant, if you're doing this as a new cop, you continue to do these things, it'll serve you, right? And if you're listening in and you're a 3, 5, 10, 15 retiree, whatever, and you've listened to this episode, like, good on you, because and I mean, I'd just be excited to hear about it. So shoot me a line if you did. I anticipated that this conversation would be helpful for anyone because it's not just about being new, right? A lot of times we need a reminder, right? Because I think that depending on who your networks are, who you're following, who you're listening to, who your mentors or bosses are, how your academy is wired or written, you may be talking about these things when you're new, and you might be like, okay, cool, sounds good. But it's actually after a couple of years that you slide into all these things we're talking about, right? The cynicism, the lack of sleep, the poor coping mechanisms, the shortness and the lack of patience with your relationships. And you start to be going towards the direction of all these statistics that we know about. I don't say that disparagingly. We know the statistics, and a lot of the statistics share their, I suppose, statistichood with us, right? The colleagues that we have that have been through multiple divorces and they share and they say oftentimes like what they would do different and what advice they would give for us. I really appreciate those insights and experience, right? That's paying it forward. That's saying, don't do as I did, right? That's, hey, there's a better way. Hey, you're working too much. Hey, man, I noticed you're kind of short with people the last couple days. You need to take a day off, right? And that could be a Sarge. That could be your beat partner. That stuff's important, right? So I like how I put the prompt out as far as, what advice would you give a new cop? And again, there is so much tactical advice. There is so much operational. I think there was a bit I may not have read where someone threw in like no case law. Yeah, absolutely. Your job and maybe, yes, not maybe, but certainly your livelihood, your status of being a free person or not may absolutely, or I said it again, will absolutely depend on it, right? Don't infringe on rights. Don't violate the law. That's a thing. It's not something we take lightly. It's not something we can afford to take lightly. But a lot of things came back to health, wellness, balance, mindset, family, introspection, checking your ego. I love it. So thank you so much for those that commented, those that shared something back. It's been really fun. I am curious to hear how people received it because it's kind of like crowdsourcing all this wisdom, a different format than having an expert, a guest with their perspective. And I love that. We're going to keep doing that. But this format's been fun too. And so I want to know what you think. I don't want it just to be fun for me. I want to have value, right? As always, I want to be helpful. So here to keep having the conversations we need to have. We need to keep developing as individuals and as a group. So again, your feedback, your likes, your shares are extremely, extremely appreciated. Thank you so much. And until next time, thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.